Joining us to unpack some of the key highlights is Ian Allis, who is a criminal law expert. Ian, thank you for making time for us. What are your reflections on Mthokozisi Twala's testimony this week?
Taking into account, good evening to the viewers. It's been very difficult to assess with regards to his evidence because there's been so many different facts that have been bantered around through the previous and all of that. And the frightening thing is that all of it is kind of leading to the idea that nobody really knows what is going on, or alternatively more, somebody's trying to cover up what really happened in that evening. It's just so many, with his evidence, there's so many questions that are now getting raised and different boxes that are being opened. It's very difficult to assess whether he's been a good witness or actually not a particularly good witness. Unfortunately, tied up with this has been all the other, if one could say, the off-field aspects that have been plaguing the trial, especially during the last week.
Mm-hmm. And is there consistency, though, between the testimony that he has given and the testimony that was given initially by the first witness in the case?
That's also where that's why I say I'm not really sure whether or not he's going to be assessed as a particularly good witness, because there's been so many different versions that have been presented and so many changes and nuances with whether or not who was seen, whether the attackers were seen, who wasn't seen, whether he was there, whether he was outside, whether he was drunk, whether he was sober. There's just been, and also in all due respect as well, what the problem is. This is also something that took place many, many years ago. After this period of time, also, a witness could start over-analyzing and over-assessing and thinking things, which also is going to undermine his credibility, which is why I don't want to really attack the witness, bearing in mind the history and the long protracted history, but certain of the statements now being made are not exactly indicative of being consistent with what's been presented before. Yeah.
So given the testimony we have had from Mthokozisi this week, is it fair to say that the state has quite a shaky case here?
The problem is that the state always had a shaky case with this one, from just the history of it. The problem is that their witnesses are not helping them, if one could say, because when you've got already questionable facts of what took place, and now you've got witnesses who are inconsistent with what's remembered and what's recalled and crime scenes on both the events as well as the further investigation. They are on a very, very bad wicket at this present moment. This is a landmine that they through, and it's not being negotiated that well.
And is there anything the state can do to somehow revive this case?
The problem that's going to end up happening is that there was already doubt coming in when there was an issue of there being two dockets. That was already enough of a basis to create certain doubt. The state unfortunately can't change what its stance is. So it's almost like those math sums where hopefully you can come right. You might not get specifically the perfect answer, but you'll still get marks along the solution. But they've got nothing else. They can't say anything now besides to go through their witnesses with their version and with their line of questioning as they've currently been doing. There's nothing they can do to change it. They're already on a shaky wicket. There's nothing, unless the witnesses that are still to come are a lot more credible, and the witnesses for the defense fumble the ball completely on this one. They'll be an acquittal.
So Mthokozisi was also asked about Netflix and whether or not he cooperated with that series on Netflix and the producers of that series. And he's indicated that he had provided the producers with Senzo Meyiwa's pictures, but he says he refused payment for those pictures. Why was that aspect so important to establish whether or not there was cooperation between this friend of Senzo Meyiwa and the Netflix documentary?
Oh, it's very simple. That one, because this witness has now been giving evidence. You've got to look over a longer period of time. It's not just been this week. It's been over a considerable period of time. But with that, the Netflix thing is quite important from the aspect of what was stated on the Netflix documentary and whether or not he could be perceived to be that his testimony is being sold to the highest bidder. What the version is all depends on who's paying and the credibility that affects him with. That's why it becomes such an important factor. Because if there is the inconsistencies between what he has stated under oath and what has been said in the Netflix documentary, and basically what they're doing is they're just undermining his credibility and saying, well, you're basically a publicity hound selling your story to the highest bidder. And that's and if that's the case, your testimony is for hire, and your testimony is going to be bought. So realistically, which is the real version, the paid for one or the unpaid for one?
Ian Allis, a criminal law expert, thank you for making time for us.